Chapter 13, Theoretical Mathematics. To see how we got to quantum madness, let's take another tour down particle memory lane. No need to cover all the dates and times and various theories. Anyone can do a Google search and find plenty of sources for this. We've already looked at a few particle theories and their equations along the way, from Newton to Chadwick to Maxwell to Bohr to Einstein to Schrödinger to Hawking to Weinberg and Kaku. Theories is in quotation marks because a theory is an explanation. Particle physics has no explanations. See the book The Best of Rational Science, Chapter 1, The Rational Scientific Method. We've already charted the course through 4 centuries of particle physics, picking up just a few of the highlights along the way. We can't see everything, and besides, the map is not the territory. Reality has little to do with our beliefs about it. Let's dig in just a little bit deeper to see if we can understand how we arrived today at such high levels of abstraction. After all, science took less of a philosophical approach, we are told, when it turned more to the empirical testing of theories through experimentation and Popperian falsification. Actually, what we find is that experiments will generally lead to confirm our beliefs, and beliefs, opinions, and proof have nothing to do with the scientific method. Doesn't the rational scientific method, RSM, and the rope hypothesis, RH, harken back to the days of Democritus, Leucippus, Epicurus, and Lucretius? Isn't rational science just a type of sophism, a way to convince and recruit through argument? How is the rope hypothesis any different than atomism? Democritus and the atomists denied divine design and intervention in lieu of what some call materialism, a step in the right direction. They saw the interaction between physical bodies, more specifically of the fundamental unit of matter, the atom, as being responsible for all observed phenomena. In that sense, yes, rational science and the resultant rope hypothesis is similar to the Greek atomists. They saw the atom, literally uncuttable, as the fundamental unit of matter. They thought that whatever we see at the macroscopic level is a result of the interactions between atoms. The atomists applied this materialism to ethics, religion, and politics, which fall under the heading of philosophy. Rational science uses the rational scientific method, concerning itself only with forming the hypothesis and deriving a theory from that, as it relates to the branches of science under the heading of physics. There is no arm-twisting, no show of hands, peer review or Nobel Prizes as in today's mainstream science. Each individual must decide for themselves and conclude possible or not possible. Rational science also sees that phenomena are the results of surface-to-surface contact between at least 2 objects. At an atomic level, all phenomena are the result of the interaction between fundamental and composite objects. Indeed, Zeno's paradoxes, as well as relativity and quantum mechanics, are laid to waste under the rational scientific method. And with the rope hypothesis, the buck stops at the hydrogen atom. Not only are hydrogen atoms indivisible, but they are eternal, and their motion never stops. RH takes this further. All hydrogen atoms are interconnected by a 2-strand electromagnetic rope, so there are no discrete atomic particles. Particle physics takes phenomena and reifies it into particles such as photons, quarks, and Higgs bosons. Rope hypothesis provides the architecture and the underlying physical mechanisms by which one can understand light, gravity, and the so-called strong and weak forces. It is because of our limited bandwidth sensory system that we must break everything down into bite-sized pieces in order to perceive and move about in our world. From the universe of matter and space to the color red versus violet, we separate the inseparable in order not to be overwhelmed by our senses. Fortunately, our unlimited ability to conceive allows us to understand that there is no physical object space, that matter is interconnected, and that the electromagnetic spectrum is a continuum including our limited portion of visible light. When the materialists of old, still under the authority of the Church, turned to math, see Georges Henry Joseph Edouard Lemaitre, God creation became Big Bang creation. Later spirits were replaced with massless point particles. The authority of the Church was replaced with the authority of the Nobel laureates and peer review, and the 10 commandments of God were replaced with the 10 commandments of mathemagic. Number 1. Reify verbs into the nouns of reality. Number 2. Avoid defining terms at all costs. Number 3. Never, nay, never under any circumstances define reality, exist, object, or concept. Number 4. If forced to define a term, always use synonyms. Number 5. Never answer a direct question with a direct answer. Number 6. Always answer questions with questions. Number 7. Never enter into thing space. Thought space is much bigger. Number 8. When in doubt, invoke the magical words energy, force, waves, or field, charge, black hole, space-time, parallel U, dark matter, mass, God works in mysterious ways, quantum magic. You haven't taken enough math. It's been proven. Number 9. Always request references, educational background information, diplomas, and peer-reviewed literature. Number 10. Never, under any circumstances, accept any arguments, no matter how rational, from individuals who cannot present the previous documentation. It is very important to understand that mathematics is not the language of science or physics. Math is not even related to physics and has limited use in science. One should not interpret the physical world from abstract mathematical concepts and claim authority, any more than one can read a Harry Potter novel and claim their interpretation is the authoritative one. While math is a language, it is not the language of science any more than German, Latin, or English. Mathematicians can no longer tell the difference between what is a real object of existence and an abstract mathematical construct. The bobbleheads believe what they are told without questioning the rationality of it, and revere the rock stars of science and physics. Mathematical equations are irrelevant to understanding reality. Equations can describe phenomena, yet explain nothing. Why rely on a system of mathematical logic whose assumptions, axioms, can neither be proven within the system or requires another system to validate it, as in Gödel's theorem? Popper's falsification dealt a death blow to the scientific method and placed it squarely in the realm of religion, where true and false, right and wrong is dictated by the authorities and duplicated by lab rats to convince and recruit followers. And what good to explaining is description anyways? We see something happen and we want to explain it. That is what leads us to the RSM, where we then remove the observer in order to be objective as possible. What good did F equals ma do for explaining the mechanism of gravity? What good did C equals Fw do for explaining the phenomena of light? If gravity is warped space or graviton balls, and light is both a photon and a wave, what was learned about gravity and light? But apply a rational, visualizable entity such as an EM rope, and these equations only then make sense. Marcus de Sautoy said, "Mathematics is a place where you can do things which you can't do in the real world." Von Neumann said, "Young man, in mathematics you don't understand things, you just get used to them." Einstein said, "You should be able to explain physics to a barmaid." Feynman said, "If you can't explain it to a 10-year-old, you don't know it well enough." Bertrand Russell said, "Mathematics may be defined as the subject in which we never know what we are talking about, nor whether what we are saying is true." James Clerk Maxwell, on page 122 of a treatise on electricity and magnetism written in 1873, wrote, "When we see one body acting on another at a distance, before we assume that the one acts directly on the other, we generally inquire whether there is a material connection between the two bodies, and if we find strings, rods, or framework of any kind capable of accounting for the observed action of the bodies, we prefer to explain the action by means of the intermediate connections, rather than admit the notion of direct action at a distance." Einstein said, "Insofar as mathematics is exact, it does not apply to reality, and insofar as mathematics applies to reality, it is not exact." I say, insofar as illustrated entities explain phenomena, it applies to reality, and insofar as reality can be illustrated, it makes sense. And finally, we see that the mathematician wishes for us to believe they have the answers. Donald Simonek said, "Science doesn't explain, science describes."